participate asynchronously. Okay, let me start with a few updates. I know it's been really frustrating for a lot of people to not be able to engage not only with our mentors, but with each other. I think I really feel for everybody's plight, and I hope you are feeling for the faculty who are going through this pandemic with you. I can tell you personally that this is the most frustrating semester I've encountered in my 20-some years of teaching. My mode of operation is to be in person, to make music, and to not be able to do that is just, my world is kind of upside down. And in fact, when over the summer, when I realized I couldn't do what I do, I had to basically redefine everything about my teaching and how I interact with this subject of music and orchestra. So as you know, who have been taking 3621 CSO online, it's really turned into a social justice course, which I feel like I'm in no way, shape, or form qualified to teach. So it has been a really humbling experience. But also it's been a kind of experience where it really stretched my understanding of who I am. So one of the ways I reached out to get help is to be part of this cohort of faculty who are going through this course called Connect Through Dialogue. And it's been really helpful for me to think about how we communicate with each other, and especially with people who come from different backgrounds. I've always been an outsider, in a way, because I am an immigrant, and my experience of being a Korean American male is one in which I've always been the person looking outside in. When I go to Korea, I feel like I don't belong, and sometimes when I go through America, I feel like, yeah, I'm traveling through rather than being a participant who fully enjoys all of that America has to offer. I think, as many of you have experienced, life is that way, right? We tend to learn from our perspectives. Some of them are you're put into environments and cast and understanding of who you are. And sometimes we form this picture of who we are without really having any say in it, right? So, and I think those of us who will fall into a trap of repeating the stereotypes, the tendencies, the mistakes of our own upbringing is one in which we don't look outwards, right? We are not, we're just staying in a very comfortable bubble of experience. So I would encourage you to find ways to find where those boundaries are that you find yourself in, and become uncomfortable with that, right? Rather than be comfortably set in your own ways. And I think what this semester forced me to do in many ways about my teaching is it really forced me to go to places that I was uncomfortable. It forced me to go to places about who I am, how I do things. I've been at Cornell teaching orchestra for 17 years. And there comes a point, I think, when you do things year over year, and I imagine for many of you have similar experiences, where your set of expectations, your set of how you interact with the world, it really, you get used to doing things in a certain way. And then there comes a point in which you know what you're doing. You sort of figure out what you have to do to get to the, get through that particular year, that particular semester, that particular set of skills, whether it be practicing a piece or teaching a course or taking a course or AP test, SAT test, whatever analogy you want to put in. And I think those of us who are learners, we are most excited when we are at that stage of development, that arena of, wow, this is new. I have to figure out how this thing works. Oh, the scale is new to me, or this class is this course is new for me to teach. And I kind of experienced that again. Early in my teaching, I experienced that every semester. I was like, okay, this is a brand new set of rules that I gotta absorb and learn how to deal with. And in some ways, conducting an orchestra at Cornell, there are always new students who come, and each student is different. And I'm always trying to figure out who are the people in front of me. How can I make their experience fulfilling and rewarding? So that's always a constant challenge that comes at me, because every semester I have new students. I think in a conservatory or school of music situation, there's a little more, you spend more time with your set of cohorts. And also the repertoire that, I've been always the kind of person who is not really interested in doing a piece again and again and again. And for a long time, I was more interested in expanding my repertoire rather than doing Beethoven 5 again and again and again. And I have colleagues who do that. They have like a 4-year repertoire that they just do it over and over. Anyway, that's another rabbit hole. So this semester, what I found was that in teaching 3621, in being engaged with all of our speakers, and in talking with my Cornell faculty who I'm taking this dialogue course with, I was really stretched and challenged into thinking about all kinds of paradigms in new ways. So every time we met a few times as mentors. What I've tried to do is bring you these sets of skills that I've learned along the way with you. And I've always found that whenever there's something, there's a set knowledge and I have to teach it to somebody else, that's when I really learn it. It's not when I just read sort of concepts and ideas and I try to absorb that in my head. That's sort of only the very, very beginning stages. When I have to actually practice it and teach it to another person, that's when I really absorb it as materials that I can use without thinking about it, without having to turn on a particular software click, right? All right, so today I'm gonna give you some ideas, but just a short update. I know it's been really frustrating. It's been really frustrating for me because I have been a public school teacher myself, and I have been in the shoe of being in a place where I said, I just wish I had a set of highly skilled university students who could be mentors to my 4th, 5th, 6th grade, or even middle school kids. I mean, I would have welcomed that with open arms. So to be honest with you, I'm completely dumbfounded with the reaction we have been met with. I'm trying to be as understanding as possible because I do not know all of their problems and setups. So I think that's what I'm going to ask you to do, right? We have a willing-bodied group of mentors who want to mentor students. And I think there are a number of explanations that they can give and I can give. But I think what we have to be patient about the process, because one of the very first thing when you meet somebody is to actually practice the first stage of Lara, which is to listen and see where they are coming from and try to understand their position. So let's just, I'm gonna go into that principle of reviewing Lara with you. So today what I would love to do is kind of delve into 3 things. this Lara principle, which I don't want to spend too much time doing because it's very straightforward. But I would love for you to practice these. And in fact, I've been practicing these with my my son, who's 11, and he's at that tween stage where he does not want to listen to me. And so I'm really trying to use this Lara principle with him. I think it's better than what I've been doing with him before I started using Lara with him. But basically, it's Lara. There are 4 stages, right? Listen to understand and what they're saying, and find something, a fact or principle on which you can agree. Oftentimes, I think my tendency when I'm dealing with my 6th grader or a person, if I'm not engaged with this Lara principle, is to just skip the first 2 stages and go to respond mode, right? I'm sort of that type A person. I'm gonna go in and fix the problem. And so what I often have done in the past is just skip LA altogether. Skip listen, skip affirm, and just respond, right? Because I wanna solve the problem. I wanna be the person that gets in there, figures out what the problem is, and fix it. But the problem is when I do that, I tend to jump to conclusions. I don't really understand where this person is coming from. I may actually come up with a solution that is completely off base and actually not what this person wanted in the first place. The first principle of listening to where they're coming from and understanding what this person is saying to you is really, really important. And I'll be the first to admit I am really bad at doing the first 2 stages. I jump to conclusions. I try to respond, and I do that with my wife all the time. I see that my wife is unhappy, and I'm thinking, okay, I got to fix something, and I'll fix the light fixture in the bathroom, and she's like, no, it's the fan noise that's the problem. Okay, all right. I just spent 4 days trying to fix this really hard to fix thing, and it was for nothing because I didn't make it any better in terms of fixing the sound. So first stage is listening and figuring out where they're coming from, and then affirming. That's a really important second stage, that you communicate to the person that you understood what the other person is saying, right? And then not just verbally, but actually understand what the other person is saying. And I will challenge you that when we interact with other people, our family members, our loved ones, I am sure you've been having conflicts as you've been quarantined in your homes with your parents, with your siblings, because I have, because I'm not practicing listening and affirming, right? I might listen, but I'm not really affirming what my 6th grader is telling me, right? He says he needs to spend 12 hours at the computer, and my reaction is, hell no, rather than trying to understand that he's trying to make up for the fact that he can't spend time with his friends like he used to. He can't spend time in orchestra like he used to. So everything has to be shifted over to an online experience. So as a parent, I'm only seeing sort of my side of the picture, where I'm worried about developmentally what my 12-year-old what's gonna happen to him when he spends 12 hours a day in front of a computer, and after a year, like physically, mentally, what is gonna happen to that? But from his point of view, I'm failing to see that he is actually trying to meet his social needs of interacting with his friends and interacting with his teachers, doing homework. So all of that does take time in front of the computer. So, I mean, I'm getting too much information territory for you guys, but that I would urge you to, in fact, practice Lara with your siblings, your housemates, your parents. And I have found that I really don't listen and affirm enough, right? All right, then you get to the third stage of respond. But once you have listened and affirmed and understood where a person is coming from, then you can show respect, even if you disagree, that how to respond in a more empathetic way, where the person doesn't really feel like, you don't really understand where I'm coming from, and you're just going off into another direction. So what's going to happen in that relationship is they're going to veer away from each other, right? So, and if you have done the first 2 steps, then that'll allow you to meet in the middle, even if you disagree, right? And I think that's one of the most difficult things. If you surround yourself with people that you completely agree with all the time, there will be no conflict, right? So, but that's never going to be. You're always going to be uh, in conjunction with people, living with people, and working with people who disagree with you, right? So, how do you work with that person, right? Um, and then the fourth level, of course, is adding information, communicate in a way that conveys that you want to continue the conversation, right? So imagine somebody from your family or in your class that you cannot understand how they could think that way, right? So without using Lara, my response oftentimes, what? How could you possibly think that way, right? Mahler is better than Wagner, right? How could you think Wagner is better than Mahler? No way. But if we are engaging with each other using the principles of Lara, listening, affirming, responding, and then the primary goal being we want to continue the conversation with this person who is on the different spectrum of ideas, right? So that's one thing. And then the next thing is I want to talk about the spheres of influence. So I'm going to make this one really short because I made the first part way too long. But there are 4 concentric circles in which we can practice Lara, right? The first circle, of course, is ourselves, right? And in that way, this in some ways, this is the easiest to practice, right? Because it's you. You understand who you are, and you can affirm, and you can hopefully continue to have a conversation with yourself in terms of your self-improvement and your well-being and all of that. And then, of course, the second sphere of influence is close family and friends, people who are closest to you. And then the third circle is your social, school, working relationships, people in CSO, CCO, coworkers, neighbors, classmates, people with whom you interact on a regular basis, right? And then, of course, the largest circle is community, people with whom you interact infrequently or in community settings. So rest of Cornell, rest of Ithaca, rest of the world, right? So, and these spheres of influence that we have, right? The immediate influence is, of course, you, yourself, your close family and friends, but you can practice Lara with all of the levels, right? And further it gets from your immediate self circle, it gets harder to practice Lara, right? Because there will be more differences. There will be more, a wider spectrum of beliefs, opinions, but we can practice Lara through all of the stages of spheres of influence. Okay, now, and then what I would love to sort of present to you, right? Once you've practiced Lara, then it's sort of, okay, how do I do that, right? And there's a theory about strategic questioning, right? Just quickly kind of summate this down, and because I want to go into a practice of this, and I'll give you links to all of these articles so you can read it further. But strategic questioning is the main role is so that we can have a personal social change in these relationships of different spheres of influence, right? So there are basically 2 levels and 2 types of questions and statements. There are what are called rock questions, which means it's not really changing anything. It's just describing the state of things as they stand, right? So it's more questions that are about describing how things are, right? It's not about water questions, which are like water. If you put it in a different container, it'll change shape, right? So it can be a future tense rather than past tense or present tense, right? So water questions are the type of questions where things can evolve and change, and rock questions are describing things that are not changeable. It's just, that's the way it has been, that's the way it is, right? And then there are 2 levels of questions in terms of these strategic questions you can ask in the different circles and practicing Lara, right? So, but on the first level, It's basically rock questions, right? Describing issues or problems. You can, they're focus questions, observations questions, analysis questions, feeling questions. But basically all of these first level questions are describing a rock situation, how things are in the present tense, how they have been in the past tense, right? And then in the second level are questions about, like water question, like about the future, right? How would you like it to be? What is the remaining of this situation in your own life? Vision questions. Change questions. How could the situation be changed for it to be as you would like it? What will it take to bring the current situation towards the ideal? What exactly needs to change here? How might those changes come about? Name as many as way as possible. So these are questions that are much more open-ended, much more creative in the sense that it allows for the person to think about how things can change rather than just how things are. Oftentimes when we think about conversations we have with the different spheres, if you get stuck on those rock questions and how things are, they can often be very much downward spiral conversations, right? In talking about inequities and racism in classical music and orchestra. If you only describe things as to how things are, then you can quickly get into a negative downward spiral conversation where it can feel really depressing because you feel like, oh, things are so terrible. This field is really horrible. Classical music is awful. And so you can really get into a conversation that may not necessarily be productive or constructive and bringing about positive change. So once you have gone through the rock questions of what are the state of things, right? Then you can start to ask questions about, well, how could it change? What are some of the things that would make it better, right? Are there alternatives? So when you're in conversation, of course, if you jump to the second level, that's responding without practicing listening and affirming, right? So you do have to go through a set of questions that are more of rock questions, just to understand where things are. But you can also ask these second level questions in the first two stages to really try to understand the aspirations and hopes and wishes of a person you're trying to engage with and really trying to understand their position. Okay, so how might these come into effect when you are a mentor in a situation? You're dealing with a fifth grader, a middle schooler, their family, their principal, their teacher. And here I'm going to stop sharing and open it up to a discussion. Okay. So can you imagine utilizing these principles of Lara where you're engaging with the community that you're mentoring, right? Whether it be a mentee's family, a mentee's teacher. One of the things you will have to do, hopefully in the spring, is to really coordinate with the teacher, the music teacher, in trying to figure out what would be helpful in this situation, right? Really dialoguing with them and listening to what the environment is, where the mentees are coming from, right? And then affirming that you understand the situation rather than coming in with a different set of agenda and saying, this is what we're going to do. So I'm asking you kind of brainstorm about what will be possible scenarios in which you could utilize Lara and what would the benefit of using Lara. Yep, Alice.
I think figuring out where to start with a student that you've never met before. So trying to figure out where they're at and what their goals are. And I would guess that'll probably involve some conversation with the parent and the child. So maybe in advance, trying to hear from the parents, maybe basic facts about how long have they been playing? Do you know what their feelings are about their instrument? What do they like and what do they not like? And does your child plan to continue, or how do they see themselves continuing? And then asking those same questions of the child to see do they even like their instrument? How do they feel about this? Is it better or worse that they're stuck online? Um, just to start a conversation with them.
Absolutely. That is so thoughtful, Alice, because one of the things that we can easily forget is there will be three different constituencies that will be interacting with you, right? There will be the parent who may have a different set of agenda than the actual mentee. There will be the teacher who may actually have even a different set of agendas. So you might be actually juggling three sets of agendas between the parent, the teacher, and the mentee themselves, right? So I think it's really important that you have these conversations, but make it clear that if it was me, I would approach the situation this way. One, I in no way want to undermine the parent or the teacher, right? So that's primary. But I also want to have a meaningful relationship with the mentee, because if I sense that the mentee themselves is really not interested and they're thinking of this as a, oh, God, my mom is making me do this thing and I hate this, you're not going to have a positive experience. Basically no one will have a positive experience if that is the case. So in some ways you have to give voice to the mentee in terms of the content and how the time is spent when you're interacting with the mentee, right? And and that's a very tricky conversation to have with the teacher, parent, and the mentee to make sure you're all on the same page, right? And because if this is not juggled well, if this is not handled well, then one of the parties will feel this is not working for me. Either the mentee will say, I don't want to do this, that my mom and my music teachers are making me do this. You know what, I'm going to quit the instrument altogether. So that could happen, right? If a parent decides, you know what, they're just playing video games and you're really connecting with my son, but like, you know, that's not what we're thinking of is the useful thing, then that'll end it. If the music teacher somehow feels like, well, you're teaching things that are contrary to what I'm teaching or in sort of competition, that's not going to work. So this is a really kind of complicated juggling act you have to do with this Menti and program, right? So on one hand, what the conversation I will have with the teacher is that let's make sure the child really does want to be part of this program, right? Because whenever I'm teaching a private lessons to a young child, I'm always making sure that conversation is taking place and we have a clear understanding that it has to be child-led in terms of motivation and initiative. The more the parent and the teacher are kneeling and meddling, I've not seen that be successful, right? The more the teacher and the mom and dad has to say, you got to practice today, more likely the child is going to stop, right? So we have to figure out a way where there's intrinsic motivation that is engendered and initiated from the mentee, right? And I think most parents, most teachers would be all in for that. I as a parent, as a teacher, I cannot imagine a situation in which the parent says, I don't want my child to initiate motivation. That's like, so conversing with the parents and teachers, what we want to try to get them on the same page is, in fact, if you want your child to continue with music and the instrument, is to figure out a way they have intrinsic love of playing the instrument and music. If we can figure that equation out, then it's all going to be downhill. It's in a positive way, right? So think about the principles of Lara, and I'll share these documents with you, and really start thinking about what. And I'm always curious to ask our Cornell Orchestra students, what was the magic formula that your parents did? Because as a parent of a 12-year-old child who's been playing cello for 3 years, he loves the cello, he loves his teacher, but he hates practicing. And I don't want to nag him. And both of his parents are musicians, so we see him going down that road. Okay, you don't want to go down that road, but if we intervene, then we're meddling. right? So I'm always curious to hear from my students, what was it? How did your parents engender love for music in such a way you were continuing to play your instrument in college as a non-music major, right? So think about that question. If you want to share that, I would love that as a parent. All right, so a lot to think about, and I was kind of hoping to do an exercise, but I'm just talking at you. So I'm sorry for leading another talking head session for you guys. I know you have enough of that this semester. Okay, so I'll send you the links to all these ideas, and hopefully you will get a very eager, enthusiastic mentee to mentor next semester, and have a safe break, okay? And recharge, stay safe, come back ready to engage with our mentees and with each other, okay? That's it.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex, I know you had a question.
Yeah, I just,
Yeah.
so Kirkland connected me with Stephanie Abrahams
Okay.
2 or 3 weeks ago, and she has a child, Dimitri, who plays clarinet and
Great.
cello.
Okay.
So she and I are still figuring out, like, I emailed her and she took a while to respond, and then I
Okay.
followed up and she was like, oh, I'll get back to you. I'm just still figuring out scheduling stuff. So
Sure.
seems like they're quite busy,
Yeah.
which I totally see where they're coming from.
Right.
But then she just replied that the school cello we use is out of commission and I'm in the process of acquiring another.
Okay.
And so I'm wondering if she's a little bit confused mixing me up with the cello mentor. Or I was wondering, I was asking Kirkland who the cello mentor is, because maybe I should copy them on my reply, just so that they're in the loop about
Sure.
the process. And
my understanding was that the cello is a new information to me. Like my understanding was that the kid played clarinet.
I think in the initial
He wanted
email,
both.
she
They wanted
said,
both.
Oh, they wanted both. Okay.
well, she said, my son is a 6th grader at LACS and he has been playing the cello for 2 school years. He started clarinet last year.
Okay.
And then she just said he would really benefit from a music mentor. So if other stuff happened that was not in the email chain, then maybe there's more, but it's kind of unclear to me if maybe cello is his primary instrument and clarinet is kind of an afterthought,
Oh, I
which
see.
happens sometimes.
Okay. I mean, my advice in this situation would be communicate with her saying you're a clarinetist. We do have cello mentors, but you know, you would basically provide mentorship on clarinet and music, right? So
Okay.
if he's interested in that, great. But if he wants a mentor who's a cellist specifically, then we have to find a cellist, right?
Okay.
But it did sound like to me that they wanted either. So the cello part is new to me. So I understood it as a clarinetist because I think that was the initial email that I saw.
Okay.
So communicate with the parent and sort of get a clarification answer. Yeah.
Okay. Kirkland, is it okay if I copy you on that? Chris, do you want me to copy you too?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Just
Okay.
to figure out what this is.
Yeah.
And
Go
then
ahead. Yeah.
hopefully, I don't know, I'm ready to get started if
Yeah.
and when he's ready to go.
Yeah.
So, okay.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, Chris.
I'm going to jump to the board meeting. So
Go ahead. I was just cooking as you were
Okay.
speaking, but it was interesting.
Yeah.
I'll be here next semester, so let's continue the efforts and see what happens. But if not, then I'm going to have to pass it off to Alex. But
I
I'm
understand.
here.
All
So,
right.
have a great holidays. If I don't see you, thank you so
You
much.
too. Bye.
Yes.
Bye, Chris. I won't be at the board meeting, but I'll see you probably
Okay.
sometime in the future.